Oh, here we go.
Okay, it's streaming on Facebook.
Well, we're
So
seeing,
is there something I can press to get it?
well, we have to see if it actually,
I have a message on my screen that says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
yep. Okay, well, we are live. Um, great. So if you want to try, hi everyone. We're gonna see if we can, as we start. Do you want to try to do a watch party on your page?
Sure. So how do I do that? Go to my page instead of your page?
I think that you go to um, my page
I'm
with
on your
it,
page.
and then you create a watch party.
Yeah, I don't see any ways to do that.
Okay.
I'll go to my page.
It does say that you could watch together and with friends or with a group. Do you see that? If you go to my
No,
page?
I don't.
Oh. Okay. Well,
Maybe it's not on my phone. Maybe it's only on the computer. I don't know.
I mean, I'm
I
looking
don't.
on my, and it says
It,
watch together with friends or with a group.
yeah, on your page.
Yeah, on my page.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not getting that. Let me try it again.
Okay. Thanks for sitting tight with us while we figure out technology, everyone.
Hosts. Lori Beth is live now. Okay, join Nick Smith. Watch together. I see that.
So press
So I'll
that.
just click start.
Yeah, perfect. So hopefully it will
And
stream
it says
onto your.
start watch party. Very cool.
Yeah, we just figured that out together. Woohoo!
Oh, it'll appear my timeline. Cool. Thank you.
Great.
Look at that.
Yay!
Now I gotta mute my phone.
Yeah, mute your phone.
Okay. Good. All right.
Well,
We're
hi,
ready.
welcome everyone. My name is Lori Beth, and this is we are going live today as part of an ongoing interview series that I do called Exploring Genuine Transformation. And the show has been on a hiatus for the last three months, and so this is the first week back, and I'm really excited to be here with Rick Smith, interviewing him as my coming back strong. Woohoo! And for those of you who have never watched this show was something that I created as a way to interview different thought leaders, teachers, coaches, anybody in the realm of transformation. And what I'm interested in here is transformation for the sake of having more of yourself, for the sake of experiencing more intimacy with life, rather than transformation to gain mastery over something or to get what we want. So we're talking more about a more inner transformation that allows us to be more of who we are. So today, that's a perfect entree to be interviewing Rick. And the topic today is Awaken Leadership, and this is Rick's body of work. I'd love to just introduce him for those of you who don't know him. And so Rick is Rick Smith. He's been a classroom teacher and an educational consultant for the last 20 years. And he's also and a leader in authentic relating and awaken leadership and conscious classroom management. He's a best-selling author. I think your book is called Conscious Classroom Management, right? Or
correct, yeah.
Did I get that correct? Yeah. And he's also the founder of Conscious Teaching and Awaken Leadership Retreats. And I had the honor of being part of one of his Awaken Leadership Retreats. So this is one of the reasons that I wanted to interview Rick, was to just be able to share his work with more of the world, because it's such important, groundbreaking work. And yeah, I think we can, he's taught workshops in consciousness, embodiment, personal growth, and meditation also for the last 20 years. And, a lot of his work focuses on helping people to love themselves more, to welcome all parts of themselves in any way that they're showing up in life. And one thing that I really love about, I remember in the questionnaire for your retreat, you said leadership isn't just about leading in your work or publicly, it's about how are you leading in your life, you know, in the moment to moment. So I love that as well as part of this conversation. So yeah, is there anything that you would like to add to my introduction?
I just want to say one thing. It's not really about the introduction, but
Mhm.
I'm just going to invite those of you who are watching to take a moment and notice what's happening for you as you're either on your phone or your whatever device you're on. And that awakened leadership starts with just noticing what's happening inside ourselves right now. So are you sitting? Are you standing? Are you checking the news as you're checking the interview? Are you cooking breakfast as you're listening? All welcome, but can we notice like our breath, our bodies, our thoughts, and allow them to be here as because we're all participating in this interview, even though it seems like Lori and I are talking and you're listening or watching. There's an active participation in kind of tracking your own kind of awareness of yourself as you're in the viewing role. So I just want to mention that. And I'll mention that as we go, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where the magic is in the present moment of what's ever happening, including watching a video or watching an interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so, thank you for saying that and kind of bringing us here now.
Mhm.
I felt my own system just settle and soften more.
Right.
Um, yeah, and that I love, just as an entree to what we're going to be talking about today in awaken and authentic leadership and participation, right? Is how are we participating in every moment of our lives?
Right.
And how present are we? And how aware are we of all the parts that are, you know, arising in each
And
moment?
even more is it's like it's not even how aware are we, it's more how kind are we with ourselves, regardless of how aware we are, because there's always more.
Mm-hmm.
There's always more shadow to shine a
Mm-hmm.
light on.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we in the process of discovering more of ourselves?
Mm,
That's all.
beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm. Well, the thing I wanted to start out with and was just to even ask you if you would define what you mean by awakened leadership or even authentic leadership. And I think what you just said is part of that definition. So maybe if you want to
Sure.
just say more about that.
Um, sure. So the the overlap of awakening and of leadership is in listening to ourselves, listening to our impulses, listening to others, listening to the room. And that's an essential ingredient for waking up in our own lives and learning kindness and love. And it's also an essential ingredient in leadership, because leading is really about what's needed rather than what we think we want. And we find what's needed in the deeper listening.
Mm,
And it always starts inside, and then from that place we can listen to the room or the company or whatever it is that we're leading. So that's one kind of way into understanding what I mean by awakened leadership. It's really through a deeper listening and tracking and trusting the impulses that arise in the body, because the mind might have a lot of stories, but the body's pretty accurate. Um, and so that's one piece. And then the other piece is it's more of a kind of and you may have gotten to this question, I don't know, but I want to introduce it early, which is that kind of I actually have a philosophy of life, and it's two sentences. I'm so proud. It took me all these years to come up with two sentences, and here it is. Drum roll, please.
Woo!
Love is unconditional, and life gives us conditions so we can love them.
Mhm.
Love is unconditional, and life gives us conditions so we can love them. Not so we can choose the good ones and sandpaper the bad ones, but we are here, I believe, to welcome everything. And that who we are is capable of allowing all of, I call the crayons in the box. Like when I was a kid, I had that 64 pack Crayola crayon box with all the different colors. And like, that's kind of how I see who we are. Like we have all these colors, and maybe I don't like, sea green or violet, but I can still welcome them in the box. And so if I'm having, for example, we started a little late this morning and there was a part of New York mind that says, well, it's 9:03, we haven't started, oh my God. And I'm like, okay, that's a crayon in the box, that kind of like rushing kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, and then I noticed the noise, no, Rick, you shouldn't be rushing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can welcome that noise. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to act it out. I can go, yeah, I have that noise. It's an old friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we bring that kind of welcoming to all of the conditions?
Mm-hmm.
And then not only all the conditions, but to actually kind of look for them. Because as we welcome more parts of ourselves, we increase our capacity for awareness, for love, for kindness, for all the good stuff. So awakened leadership is kind of a combination of all that. And it's about leading from the body, from the heart, where there's an openness to being lost in the leadership. The traditional model, like at least in the United States, is we look for leaders who know everything and they're going to lead us out and they know what to do. And that's nice, I guess, but there's also a human place of allowing the mystery to help guide us to guide others.
Mm-hmm.
And the mystery sounds really kind of poetic and romantic, but the mystery means I don't know.
Yeah.
There's moments where and so to be that kind of that open vulnerability, but also the faith and the trust that what we need will appear, will arise.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all kind of connected to awakened leadership.
Beautiful. So I'm actually curious about if you could give some grounded examples, actually, of both of them. One of them I see is like if somebody, let's say, was leading, and we'll just take it to be like a group or even like maybe a session, let's say, with someone. And there was a moment of like, wow, I'm having all these parts come up and I'm still in leadership. What's an example of, how that could look, and then how one might use that in their leadership? And then I have the same question about kind of leading from the I don't know, like a moment where it's like, wow, I really don't know what to do right now, or I'm kind of in the mystery, and then where to go from there.
First, I'm going to give you one of my favorite quotes. It's from Walt Whitman, and I'm going to paraphrase it. He says, "Do I contradict myself? So be it. I contain multitudes." In other words, we can have multiple experiences at the same time, and it's not a problem, and we don't have to choose one over the other. So I can be sad and I can be excited. I can be exhausted and energized. There's all these different kind of crayons can be welcomed at the same time. So when I'm leading a retreat or a workshop, and we're in the space where there's a circle of people, maybe 15 or 20 or 25 people, and I don't know what to say, like someone asks a question or there's a moment and I don't know what to say, it's the same muscle with a group as it is just with myself in my own life. So what I'm learning to do is trust the I don't know. And so what I might do in the circle is just be silent for longer than is comfortable for me, which as a New Yorker is about a quarter second, right? But to just slow down and go and notice to trust that if I don't have an impulse to speak, then I'm having an impulse to not speak, and to let the silence be the communication. And what I've noticed in the kind of work I'm doing, authentic relating or awakened leadership, is that often the magic happens in those moments between the lily pads, jumping from pad to pad when someone's speaking or when I'm speaking, when I let myself kind of drop into the depth and be lost there. Sometimes it's as simple as someone speaks and I don't know what to do or say, and I just pause and I literally will just repeat a phrase that they said. And it allows them to go down to the depths with me, and then in those depths, they can kind of begin to welcome parts that they said but didn't feel. So the slowing down is an example of a kind of a creative example of when I don't know what to do. Another example, as a leader, which I do all the time, and whether I'm teaching teachers or running retreats, it's like, well, what you ask is a great question, and I'm not sure what to say, but is there someone in the room who'd like to contribute? Because we're all really have a lot to contribute. So what's your idea? And then to trust that impulse to yield to another. And then what happens to me personally, oftentimes when I do that, as someone starts offering their perspective, suddenly all this stuff opens up in me. And so there's this kind of like interesting connectivity in the room, that we're all these little kind of dots, like on the ocean, and the ocean is moving through us. And so they start speaking, oh yeah, now I get it. And then I can follow in or follow through. So it's really this is a whole world, and I could talk for hours on it, but
Yeah. Well,
but
oh, go
let me
ahead.
just say one more thing, Lori. So what happens in the retreat, say, is the noise in my head is, I'm the leader, I should know what to do and what to say. Everybody's looking at me, oh my God, what like the pressure's on, right? And so to me, one of the crayons in my box that I've been kind of leaning into welcoming for quite a long time is that noise that says I'm supposed to know what to do. And if I don't welcome it, if I react to it, I will blurt out stuff that's going to get the heat off of me, but not necessarily be of service. But if I just allow, oh, there's that old friend, that noise that says a leader needs to be competent in every area all the time, and notice that, and I relax with it, and then it can soften, and then I often know what to say. But it's a process, and it doesn't show up necessarily. You don't see it in the room, but that's what's happening to me quite often. I'm just tracking these kind of self-judgments that used to drive me crazy and now kind of drive me sane, because as I notice them and welcome them but don't act them out, there's always wisdom in them. Every experience is a doorway if I just sit with it slightly, just another moment. Really, it's not like I have to sit with it forever, just a moment. And then there's wisdom, and there's grace that comes through. So this is like, just in this interview, noticing I have to have an answer to her. I don't have an example prepared. All that's going on, and I'm like, okay, maybe an example is to look at the screen and go, I don't know what to say. A live example. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I just, God, that was such a, I don't know, that really, your response really opened my heart. Actually, I really feel it in my body. And one of the things that I think you do so well, and, and even what I'm feeling as you're speaking, right, is that you being with those voices inside of you, and being in that place of the I don't know, like everything you just described, allows the other to also welcome those parts in them, and to also take those moments of pause. And
Yes.
so, like, the whole time you were talking, I actually was thinking about how everything you just said was also, it's actually the path, and it makes sense to me even more, like the path of awakening, because it's like, okay, I'm sitting in the mystery, I'm sitting in the I don't know.
Right.
I'm, being with all the different parts of me, in a more open, expansive way, allowing them to just kind of to be with, right? And then allowing what wants to emerge from that space to emerge. And to me, that actually is the path of, you know, and I'm interconnected with the whole. I'm feeling my interconnectedness, because all of your examples also spoke to that as well.
So to take that a step further, in your work, I do one-on-one work as well. I call it guiding work.
Mhm.
So let's say, Lori, that you feel really sad on a particular moment, okay? And your programming is, I can't feel sad, I have work to do, or I'm a role model for these people,
Mhm.
right? So then what happens is you're holding your breath around your experience. And so there's held breath in the field. Let's say you're working with clients or in a group. and there's held breath in the field that you're in. And so people feel, without even knowing why, that their sadness is not welcome in the room.
Yeah. Mhm.
And as you, conversely, as you go, as you welcome, wow, sadness is here. Let me check this out. Let me give it its time in the sun. And you let yourself feel it. It becomes a doorway. And as you welcome sadness, it doesn't mean that you're a sobbing mess, although it might. I don't really know. But as you do that, and you do that over time, then you find that people, even strangers at cafes, will come up to you and say, you know, I know we haven't met, but I'm feeling really sad, and I just felt to say hello, because there's something
Yeah.
in the field that invites people, because people are desperate to love themselves in
Hmm.
those places that the noise says no, that you have to get over that to find the love. But there's such a grace in allowing the sadness or the fear or the anger or the hurt or whatever it is, or the beauty. All of it is stuff we resist. So as we welcome it in our
Hmm.
work, in
Hmm.
ourselves and in our work, people feel more welcome.
Yeah, and there's another piece that just came through for me as you were speaking, because I know, as part of the retreat, and this is something that we could get into, you talk about, coming from inner authority, and that
Yeah.
actually by being with ourselves and welcoming all parts, we are actually handling ourselves. Like I would use the
Mhm.
analogy because I think because have worked with kids a lot, I think a lot about kind of like a kid who's it's like being with the child, right? Containing them, and then
Mm.
they feel held. So I was just thinking like it's like in the way that you're doing this kind of internal work, even when you're leading, we go back to that, right? That you're just being with yourself, or you're leaving these pauses. There's a comfort in yourself of being with all parts. There's a kind of inner authority of like, I'm okay, I've got
Right.
this now,
Yeah.
and therefore I've got the room. And then that also gets translated. So then, as vulnerable as you are, or whatever's going on, people feel not only like, oh, I can welcome all parts, but I'm he's got it. Like the room is actually contained,
Yeah.
like he's
Exactly.
in authority, and I feel
Sure.
safe to,
Sure.
be exactly where I am. Hmm.
Right. So I contrast inner authority with inner apology. So inner apology might be, okay, everybody, let's get started. Okay, let's come on and have a seated circle. Okay. Like when you hear that, like what happens? It's like, there's something on television I kind of want to check out. Like there's this that you don't feel held.
Hmm.
But on the other side, if I come from a more inner authority perspective, it's like, okay, everybody, let's get started. Please form a seated circle. Can't wait to begin.
Hmm.
There's a different quality. It's like, oh, I'm invited, and
Yeah.
there's no fragmentation,
Hmm.
because as the leader in that moment, I'm welcoming people. I'm
Yeah.
welcoming myself.
Hmm.
Yeah. And inner authority, just to give some background. So I was a school teacher for quite a while, and then I started teaching teachers, and primarily on classroom management. And it got really popular, and I quit my day job, and I was on the road for many years. And I've spoken to over 100,000 teachers in 15 countries, mostly in the US. And I have a best selling book that keeps selling.
Hmm.
Um, and what I discovered, the principles that I was sharing, and it's a lot of practical stuff for teachers, but there's a couple of key principles, which is I call it assume the best about kids, that they want to be there and they want to learn regardless of what they say.
Hmm.
And also this idea of growing into inner authority, not in a mean sense of authority, but in the sense that we're authors of what's happening. And we are in the charge of being in charge. And it can be very soft and open. And what I discovered over time was that those principles that work in the classroom of assume the best and inner authority work personally for me and are key building blocks for awakening and for leadership. And
Mm.
so it all kind of blends. And so what I found over time was my interest has moved more toward these smaller groups, with a focus on consciousness and welcoming and inner authority and assume the best, rather than the big keynotes for 500 or 1,000 teachers. It's a different message, even though the essence is the same. And so the background or the training that I went through for myself to keep embodying assume the best as I'm teaching all these teachers, and to grow in inner authority on stage, I've discovered like it's kind of like the magic, like the secret sauce of awakening and leadership are these elements, and to assume the best about our own experience, our own thoughts. Wow, I'm choosing to wake up, and these really hard experiences have shown up. And to have curiosity, I wonder what it is, rather than I wonder how I can get rid of this so I can be a good person. It's like just to be open and curious. Well, if this is arising and I'm choosing to wake up, it must be for a purpose that's going to serve me. Let me check it out, rather than shutting down and closing away. So assume the best has so many subtle. I mean, the classic example is someone cuts you off on the highway and you can assume that they're racing to the hospital,
Yeah.
right? Rather than something wrong with them. And but the subtleties in so many aspects of our lives where we have that option to assume the best, to lean into assuming that the universe is kind and not out to get me, in spite of the experience of whatever is happening. And that's a key building block. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you're also, I mean, I love what you're saying again, because you're also assuming our interconnectedness. And you said it so well in that when you said like, it's like I'm assuming that whatever's going on in me and what's going on in the room is exactly what needs to be here. And there's something, it's like there's something here that's actually going to allow us each to deepen, or the group to deepen, and for us to feel our, the wholeness of who we are. And so then that's also going back to like, it goes back to, I mean, we aren't calling it non-existence, but I know you call it non-existence in your in work, but it goes back to the I don't know, the mystery. Like, wow, I'm open to receive life right now. I'm open to receive this moment, and see what this, and I'm assuming that there's something here that's important.
Sure. So let me give a little a practical kind of application of this. Something that I do that's I think it's radical, although maybe people watching don't. So if someone shares a judgment with me, you're mean, or you're incompetent, or you're a fraud, or if I have my own self-judgment, which happens 1,000 times more than someone sharing a judgment with me, what happens to me, so let's say, Laura, you say to me, Rick, I don't know, you're a fraud, or you're a loser, or you're not enough, or whatever, the standard self-judgment. And you say that to me, or I get that from you, non-verbally. Instead of defending myself and trying to prove that, no, I'm really the real deal, what I do is I ask myself, and this is something I do constantly, internally, ask myself, if this judgment of me is true, if I am a fraud, if I am incompetent, if I am whatever it is, if this is true, can I still love myself? And let me break down love myself to something that's, to me, a little more practical, because love is like AM radio, I love you, but it's different. It's like, can I lean into tenderness with myself, if that's true of me? Kind of like, when you're 3 years old and you go to the supermarket and you get lost and you can't find your mom, right? And it's like, can mom be there? Like, can I be the mom for myself? Can I be the dad for myself? Like, okay, this might be true. If it's true that this really negative thing is true about me, can I still be kind with myself? Can I still breathe? Can I still be soft? And the answer is always yes. Always, for all of us, because love is unconditional. Love always wins. There's no condition that is unlovable. It's not like it happens instantly, but it's a koan, it's a question that I can lean into. Wow, if I'm really self-centered, if I'm really a coward, whatever the noise is, and I've played with them for many, many years, can I be with that coward? Can I be with that selfish person in a way that's kind, not indulgent, but soft and tender? It's like, yes, even unkind or scared people are welcome to love. And what happens in that is everything changes. Everything changes. And I discover that the judgments are doorways into a greater expansion.
Mhm.
Because then all of a sudden these noises become allies rather than enemies.
Mm.
And then I don't react. Someone says, "No," I go, you might be right. It's not my experience that I'm that,
Mhm.
but I'm going to sit with it as you speak, because why not? I mean, I'm powerful enough to manifest you having that judgment of me. So I'm going to thank you for judging me because I've manifested that. What's in it for me? Let me sit with it.
Mm.
Rather than, no, you're wrong and I'm not like that. And what does that do to communication and to intimacy? It kills it, at least temporarily. So it's kind of a radical way of going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, when you were speaking, I was thinking about something also. Something kind of came to mind around on the retreat, something you said to me, um, which I think is related to this, which is like I was like, but this part of me is not, like I feel like I'm in a different place now. And you were like, but maybe this part of you that's challenging will
Hmm.
be here forever. And so I
Yes.
want to add that to this what you're saying right now, because that was really,
Yes.
um, that was really, really, it really landed for me. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
maybe it was like in that moment with that part, I got like, this is like, I got how I was subtly wanting to make it go away and wanting for it to be different. And actually, in that moment, it was like, okay, maybe I'm always going to feel this, and that's completely fine. And then it
Exactly.
completely relaxed, exactly what you just said. And there was
It's a
there was a
beautiful paradox. Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's that paradox of, it's like, think of your best friend or one of your best friends. Do they invite you over so that you give them something? They just want to be with you,
Yeah.
right? And the noises in our heads, we can treat them in the same ways as we treat friends. Like, come on in out of the cold.
Mm-hmm.
Stay here. You can stay here forever. Like, I love you. I'll never leave you. Just stay. Even if you never change, even if you're noisy and irritating, right? That the inner voice, whatever it is. And when we if we do it to get rid of them, it doesn't work. We're not really saying yes. But if we welcome them in as potentially eternal,
Mm-hmm.
then this alchemy happens.
Yeah.
And but we can't do it in order to have it happen. It just happens. It's
Yeah.
tricky.
Yeah.
And then what happens a lot is, so the noise, the judgment, whatever it is, has been knocking on the door, driving us crazy, and we wall the door off. No, I'm not this person. No, that's not true of me. And then finally, out of exhaustion or insight, we open the door and we welcome it in. And the noise says, thank you. It's been really hard out there. So grateful. And we tell, look, you can sit at the table with all the other noises, right? And the noise says, thank you so much for welcoming me. Is there anything that I can do for you? Right? Because that's what friends do when they feel welcome. And we tell the noise, yes, you can stay as long as you want, but could you be a little more quiet? And then all of a sudden, it's an ally, and it's this support of another opening of in our map of what can be welcomed. So it's the exact opposite. These noises are knocking on our door because they are doorways. They are ways into a greater self-love
Mm-hmm.
and a greater intimacy with others. And of course, we all, myself included, like, no, not that one, but as we welcome these crayons one at a time into the box, we expand. And from my perspective, there's no end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not like we get to all the crayons are in the box. I'm good now. I'm enlightened. I'm going to put my flag on the top of the mountain and get my lounge chair and kick back. It's like the muscle of welcoming keeps growing,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes an adventure rather than a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's not like I got to the end. No, there's always more, because we can welcome not our own noise, but our friends' noise, our ancestors' noise, our culture's noise, our
Mm-hmm.
gender's noise. It's just, there's always more. And
Well,
this is, so it's a leaning into the welcoming that is what most matters, not the getting to the end of the crayons.
mm-hmm. Which even in and of itself, and this is part of the work I do with people too, is it's just that feels so relieving. It's like there's nowhere to get. And it's also like even when you say, sure, we can keep welcoming more and more parts, and like you said, our culture, our ancestors, and we might continue to be like, each moment's new. So I may have the same shame come up, you know, over and over again. And it's not about even like, oh, now I've captured it, or now I've welcomed it completely. It's just, oh,
Yeah.
now there's this moment. So
Right.
to me, like, this is what I really am enjoying this conversation, in the sense of, I keep seeing all these parallels to the path of the spiritual path and the path of
Sure.
awakening, which is obviously what you're teaching in leadership. Because that path, to me, that path is, and what transformation in my view is, and or what I want to be behind, which is that it's not a, I'm transforming to be another person or to get somewhere.
Right.
I'm just showing up and learning how to be a human, and learning how to, connect more deeply with myself and with other people, and welcoming all these parts, and leaning into love, leaning into loving myself. I like that definition, that it's more of a,
Mm.
it's like tending and being tender with self, not like like, even I think about this a lot, even like concepts that we have, like self-love or self-confidence, they become crystallized. We're like, this is
Exactly.
what self-love is,
And
versus
then it
like,
becomes this, yeah, yeah, you
yeah,
got it.
I don't know,
It
go
becomes
ahead.
this choice, that like this unattainable choice.
Exactly, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't work, so I'm not loving myself. So I need to punish myself. All of that whole, it's like, it's not even a choice. It's like the choiceless choice. It's just to recognize and to lean into, rather than to make a leap.
yeah, yeah, which is so beautiful. And I love, it's so amazing how you take, I mean, this can be applied to any area of life, but then to be able to apply it to leadership,
Yeah,
and the work that we're offering, like that we're doing in the world, or how we're like, um yeah, how we're being with others, but how we're able to kind of offer, like,
yeah,
to teach, or to um
sure.
support others. And that actually, that, I don't know, there's something that feels really great about it being something that gets to be translated into, like, how we're showing up in any area of our life, you
Sure.
know
Let me
across
give you an
the.
example. I just thought of this example.
Yeah.
So I taught this Awaken Leadership Retreat last December, and there was a man in the group who teaches workshops, like for a living. He just travels and teaches. And he had had a kind of a breakdown in his last workshop. He said, I kind of got lost, and I didn't know what to do, and I overcompensated and did this bravado, and people didn't know what, it was this whole thing. And what he's said that he learned from the retreat is that he's always had this fear of leading, of being in front. And he's always thought that he would be a great leader when he no longer felt the fear. Hmm. I'm touched as I speak it. And
Yeah.
what he came to in the retreat was, he said, look, I realize I can be afraid and I can be a great leader at the same time.
Mm.
Like Walt Whitman, I contain multitudes, different crayons in the box. Like he said, yeah, if I don't push away that I'm afraid, that fear is a doorway into a deeper listening and a moment to moment like grace, where I'm actually attending to each moment. And there's a humility. I was going to say this earlier. There's this whole romantic ideal of being in the mystery. What it does when we don't know, when we allow ourselves not to know, is it engenders deep humility. Because I have nothing to stand on. It's a new moment. It's a new moment. I'm afraid this moment. I'm this moment. And every moment, I kind of have to keep undoing who I think I am in order to be present. So
Mm.
there's a deep humility. And
Mm.
from that deep humility can arise a dignity and an expression
Mm.
that is potent and powerful. And the greatest leaders, that we exalt, like Nelson Mandela or Gandhi or Martin Luther King, for example, where they are standing up so firmly, but there's such a deep humility, such a deep welcoming, and they go together. And the key piece in all of this is that humility, that welcoming. I don't really know.
Mhm.
I'm just fumbling around, and then watching the magic happen over and over again. Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to offer something. Um, I'm really enjoying this. I, when I used to interview for teaching jobs as a school teacher, when I first started, I really enjoyed it because I got to talk about my passion. You know, sure, I'd be nervous because there's a lot on the line, but I really enjoy it. Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I just want to say, I want to my re-versioning of Namaste. I imagine a lot of people watching know it. Namaste is two hands together, and my understanding of the traditional interpretation is I bow to the divine in you. And I've kind of reinterpreted it in a certain way. I mean, that's really what it is to me, but I've broken it down. And it might be of value to people watching. So the way I look at it is this: the left hand is the human, and the right hand is the being. So we are human beings. And we are equally 100% each. It's not that the being has to dominate, that we're equal. And so the human is all the conditions, all of the what ifs and shoulda, woulda, coulda, all the falling short, all the myriad experiences of life, the apparent limitations, whatever they are. And as we notice them and welcome them, we meet them with being. The being is the unconditional welcoming. And we bring them together. And so the togetherness is I am both. I am limited and infinite. I am temporary and eternal. I am messed up and beautiful. Like all of this is the namaste together. And it's not that we bring the being together to overpower or dominate or take over. We let them coexist. And this is what it means. This is the koan, the puzzle of being a human being. We are both spirit and matter. We are personality and grace all together. So when I do the namaste, this is what's happening to me. I'm just allowing myself to be in the grace of limitation, essentially. So namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, we've been talking a lot about welcoming all parts and that whole process of being. And I know that this is part of that conversation, but I'd love for you to talk about, I know that your website's called The Tender Edge, and you talk about the tender edge, and if you could just speak to what you mean by that, and
Sure. Yeah, thank you. There's a phrase or a desire that most people I know have, which is they want to expand their comfort zone. And what people often forget about or don't realize is to expand your comfort zone, by definition, you need to be uncomfortable. Because any place outside the zone is uncomfortable. And until you step into the discomfort and then make it comfortable by expanding, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's like an unknown place. And so to me, the way to do that that's most efficient and most gentle is what I call the tender edge. The tender edge is where we have one foot in resource and safety and one foot kind of reaching out into the unknown. Mm-hmm. If we go too fast, if we jump both feet into the unknown, what happens is our nervous systems can't handle it. We get slingshotted back into contraction. And we wonder what just happened? Did I even touch any newness? But if we don't venture out enough, then we stay kind of in this isolation and stasis where there's not enough aliveness. And the tender edge is that place where we are resourced and leaning at the same time. We are in that vulnerable open space. And that's why when I do retreats or workshops or one-on-one, I always say, this is not the vulnerability Olympics. Mm-hmm. This is not macho vulnerability. We are not leaping blind faith into pain. We are going step by step. Mm-hmm. And my understanding of, and I know this is what you teach around trauma, and is that when we're in a traumatized state, like there's often this noise in our head that says, if I just touch the center of this, it will all go away and I'll be healed. I just have to feel it fully. And there'll be this big explosion and I'll be free. And my experience of that and my understanding of that is that it's a noise that is not to be listened to. Mm-hmm. That we don't ever have to go to the center of the trauma. We just touch, if this is the trauma, we just touch the edge of it. We touch it for a moment and we go back to safety and resource and breathe and relax. We touch it again and go back. It's a dipping in, a titration or a pendulation in and out. And that's what the tender edge is. It's that place of attending to growth at a speed or a pace that is sustainable and relaxed. And so sometimes the tenderest, edgiest thing to do is say, yeah, I just want to watch a movie today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to play in that game. I'd rather just do my thing. Like it seems slow, but because you never go backwards, because there's no recovery,
Yeah.
it's actually the most efficient way to open
Yeah.
and expand. Yeah.
Well, and then there's also, I think there's so many pieces of what you're saying, because another piece with trauma is that what's actually true is that if you're outside of your own window of tolerance, and it's different for everybody, the trauma actually can't get processed. And so you're just
Right.
in the state of re-traumatization. And so what people don't realize a lot of the time is that if you, let's say you're in an activated state and then you go watch a movie because that feels regulating, the trauma will actually start to, it will start to, what's it called? What's the word that I'm looking for? It'll basically start to work itself out on its own. Like it
Yeah.
will, of its own accord, because it's already in the system. And then there's more space to actually be with it. So I love that you're saying that. I mean, I think the other thing about it is that in the context of, I think, your retreat and your teachings, I think what I noticed is that you also engendered a lot of self-responsibility, because you really gave permission. And I think you probably do this when, in all your work, but giving permission to be like, okay, I'm trusting that you know how to take care of yourself, and that, if you're not participating, there's a good reason, and that you're actually honoring you. So it also, I think, can help people then to learn what is my edge, and
Right.
I get to choose it, and I get to play with that, instead of kind of relying on somebody outside, like a leader, to kind of know what your edge is. It's like you kind of get to know it yourself. So
Sure. So that's something that I'm really kind of very focused on. Is it's not that I just say in the beginning of a retreat, you can say no. I said every time I offer an exercise. And if someone says no, I celebrate that. I say, thank you. That's fantastic. I love that you're honoring you, because there's such a stigma. It connects to this whole thing about, I call the power of the microphone. Like if I'm the leader, there's this agreement, this unconscious agreement that we're supposed to follow Rick's lead. And if, let's say, Lori, you don't want to do a particular activity, there's going to be a noise in your head, most likely, that there's something wrong with you, that you're not following that. And that noise is not to be believed to me. It's like, no, honor, assume the best. The best is that you want to take a break, or you want to take care of emails, or you want to take a walk, or you want to whatever, be with a friend. Like, let's assume that you are leading yourself. And who am I to pretend to know more than you do about yourself? I'm making offers, and then you can choose or not, and that's sacred.
Well, it's also, you're engendering people's inner authority, because they're getting to learn about themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to share this, because it's kind of alive for me, in terms of also what I see the tender edges in your teaching, at least that you haven't you haven't said directly, which is that one thing that I noticed in working with you and being on the retreat was that, so the moment that I was the most vulnerable was something that was so familiar to me that it didn't do that much for me, and it was not my tender edge. My tender edge was actually to sit back more and just to be present. And I mean, there was other tender edges for me, but it was a really deep learning. And I think that's another piece to speak to, that it's so different for each person. And what I got to see was the part, like I always have kind of this part of me often that is either can be really vulnerable or like ultra engaged. And instead it was just interesting to notice, actually that didn't do that much for me. But sitting back and saying nothing and noticing my own parts coming up, and being present for the rest of the group, and not having this part that kind of usually not acting from this part that's like, usually responding to everything, or I have something to say, allowed me to be in much deeper contact with myself in a group.
Yeah.
And so that was the tender edge, right? And so I think
Right.
it's beautiful, the concept, because it allows for each of us to see what's true for us. Whereas for somebody
Right.
else, being super vulnerable and really revealing themselves and crying might be like, wow, this was huge for me. I'm never able
Sure.
to do that. Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I'm going to kind of challenge the vocabulary just slightly in the sense that what I'm going to suggest, at least my interpretation of what you're saying, is that
Yeah.
you were most vulnerable kind of sitting back. That was your vulnerable edge.
Mhm.
And the normal Lori of jumping in with this and that and having deep feelings and stuff was wasn't as alive.
Mhm.
It wasn't as tender. Oddly, it's like the known. It's what you know. This is what Lori does at workshops, right? And so
Yeah.
this new place was actually more vulnerable because the noise in your head that says no, I'm not fully engaging, right? Then you got to welcome that.
Mhm.
And so in the next workshop or retreat, you might be the one who's up in front all the time. You don't know, but to do that was in response to a listening for what was new and alive for you, and which is vulnerable to me.
Yeah. 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 No, that's great. Yeah. No, definitely. It was definitely vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and there's a vulnerability in not being in being on the side.
Hmm.
Like I you know this because you came to the retreat, but I use public speaking as a doorway into people getting to know themselves deeper. So they get in front and they do this and that. And there was a woman who consistently chose not to go in front during the last retreat. And I spoke with her and she said, I always do the right thing. I always am the one who participates fully. And for me, it was so edgy to not volunteer to get up. It was so much like more alive and scary for me to sit on the side and have everyone notice that I didn't get up and be in my inner authority internally without having to defend myself. Yeah, I'm just choosing to participate by watching and witnessing rather than getting in front. What a great gift she gave herself. And when she said that, I was like, that's so great. I, I'm going to offer all sorts of retreats that you should not come to, just just to have that wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
But
Beautiful.
there's really no. It's like every moment is different.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and she agreed. She said, "Look, I didn't sit on the sideline like I didn't determine that I was going to do that. I just kept not getting up,
Yeah. Hmm.
and that was my edge, and that's beautiful."
Hmm.
I want to add one more thing that to round out pieces
Sure.
that I do.
Yeah.
We talked about titration and trauma, and um, in my work, I focus a lot on kind of what I call press and release. And the press is where we get to focus on those more intense places. We reveal ourselves to ourselves or to others. And then there's the affirmation. We get affirmed through into getting a chance to integrate into ourselves. And there's many ways to integrate: touch and breathing and sound and being still and being on the earth, grounding. There's so many ways, but this is a key piece to any of the work that I do, is that there's time for the body to integrate and to know viscerally and sensation in the sensations that we are safe.
Hmm.
Because it's not always constant expand, expand, expand. No, we expand and then we relax and we soften. Okay, this I'm still good. I'm still here. This is the new normal. That
Yeah.
takes time, and then
Hmm.
we can go out and explore more. So that's a key piece of everything I do, whether it's one-on-one or
Hmm.
groups.
Thank you for speaking that. That does, not only does it feel like it rounds out kind of everything we've spoken about, but
Yeah.
it's really actually the heart of what I have felt in working with you, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like that there
Cool.
is space and time for integration, and that like there's no like, oh my God, I'm having some big, big, big experience. It like for me it was like it's felt like it's continually integrating. And
Yeah.
in my own work I see that as well. Like I think I used to be more aligned with like, oh, we're doing this deep work and it's going to get us here, but it's actually, the slower the better. in essence. It's like we're
Sure.
actually able to, you know, we're actually able to notice those parts, to be with them, to allow them to integrate. So
Beautiful.
I just, yeah, I really appreciate that. I think
Sure.
that is really what I have felt in working with you. And
Thank
I
you.
think it's a good place to, we've covered, I think we've covered many parts in this interview.
Oh, I just want to give one more thing that just popped up, if that's okay. I'm going to
Yeah,
give a roadmap, just a very fast roadmap that we spent the entire week-long retreat on.
great.
And it's modeled in my mind after Dante, who wrote the Inferno,
Uh-huh.
Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And the roadmap is to ultimately to be able to express and live our genius in the world. So it's a big roadmap. Setting up a tail end for anyone who's actually still watching the interview. You get the gold at the end of the rainbow here. So the first piece is it's always about welcoming what we're not normally willing to welcome. And the first threshold is to welcome the negative judgments. We talked about that, and there's a whole piece that I do around welcoming that I'm not enough, or all the things that come from that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then as we do that, which is very vulnerable for most people, and then I share a hotter fire, which is to welcome positive judgments.
Hmm.
I'm beautiful, I'm magnificent, I'm enough, I love, I'm alive, I'm sexy, I'm vibrant. Like all of those judgments are actually hotter fires to welcome than the negative. Negative judgments are like, we get a lot of support and accolades from all our friends to welcome the negative, but to welcome I'm beautiful beyond compare.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
whoa, there's more of an isolation in that. It's more edgy. And we are definitely more afraid of our magnificence than our smallness. But it doesn't stop there. That's purgatory. That's the second step from hell to purgatory. But the third one is kind of wild, because what we most resist, I'm going to suggest, is that we don't exist. And I know it's kind of blows the mind out. What does that even mean? That there's a place underneath everything where we are a wave and not a particle.
Hmm. Hmm.
And as we drop into the wave consciousness, I call it non-existence. It's the supreme openness to the moment.
Hmm.
What I have found on my retreats is that pretty much everybody drops, at some point we drop into non-existence, and the field itself starts to be the leader. And I just kick back and we just see, because that non-existence is the supreme intelligence.
Hmm.
And then to get up in front of an audience from a place of non-existence and make the boldest claim you can that doesn't kill you. I am the love that I seek, right? I am a steward of unconditional love, whatever it is. And to say that and be witnessed by 20 or 30 people, and then to notice all the noise that comes up in your head that says, who are you to say this? And this is the key, to welcome that noise. Just keep letting the noise come. It doesn't always come in the moment you're in front of an audience, but over time, as we welcome that noise, it gets silent, more and more silent. And then what happens is that we are now engaging or in that place of genius.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what genius on the earth is. It's standing up and then and making friends with all of the resistance until there's nothing remaining but the standing.
Hmm.
And that happens for a lot of people who've been doing the same thing for 30 years, and now they're virtuosos or experts or masters. But those 30 years are them slowly being with the charge that says, who the hell are you to do this? And
Hmm.
we can accelerate that by inviting that noise up front. So what takes 30 years can take 6 months or 5 minutes. It's a very different way, but it's a hotter fire, but it's actually very relaxing.
Yeah.
Non-existence is it's the sweetest thing. So to be a wave instead of a particle, and then to allow life and earth to move through us rather than staking our claim to things. Very different perspective, which to me is the ultimate intersection of awakening and leadership, that
Yeah.
place of full
Hmm.
openness. Mm. I had to say that.
Thank you. No, I love it. It's a great
Thanks.
place to end. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna any response to it because it was perfect.
Nor can I.
Well, thank you. It's been really lovely to do this interview with you, and just to, I mean, yeah, just to hear everything, feel everything actually that you have to say. I think that's one thing I really appreciate about your work is that I feel it. Like you're using words, but it's a transmission, and the way you speak about these things is, I think, a way that's really integratable for people. Like you can make use of it.
I hope
And
so.
I just to add a plug for Rick's work is that, and I'm sure you do this also with individuals because I've worked with you in a group only, but you also lead in a way that there's a lot of experiential exercises and things that really allow one to deepen into self in a way that's also very integratable. So a lot of the things he's talking about actually, your work is a very direct experience into non-existence, into self,
sure,
into, welcoming all.
I get truly uncomfortable in a retreat if I've spoken more than 7 minutes. It's time for people to engage.
It's amazing. I'm like, if you want to learn how to be very succinct and really powerful in your language, to work with Rick because you'll get it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to, I just really want to personally highly recommend Rick's work to everyone who's watching. And yeah, and I think that this was a great, introduction and way for people to feel you and kind of know what you do. I'm wondering if you could speak to, the different ways that you work with people and how they might reach you and your website. And we'll include some of this information in the comments so that you can make sure to be able to contact Rick.
Thank you. My website is thetenderedge.com. I do work with individuals and couples. I do workshops and retreats. I'm a senior course leader of Authentic Relating, which is a worldwide movement. It's a weekend course. It can be online or in person. That's profound for learning tools for intimacy with self and others. And then, of course, the Awakened Leadership Retreat is taking off in a big way because it works whether you're leading others or just for yourself. And it's just principles of good living. So that's available. So my website, you can find me that way. And I imagine if you're watching, we're probably friends on Facebook. Rick Smith, Messenger works really well. So those are simple ways to find me.
Okay, great. And I just want to give a plug that if you're just tuning in now at the end, I really highly recommend, even though this was a long interview, I really highly recommend watching it. There was a lot here. You could probably even just like go to different points and you're going to learn something important. And
thank you. I hope so. Yeah.
I believe so.
I do too.
That was my
goal. That was my goal. It's like, if it's not practical, I'm not interested.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel that way too. That's kind of how I like to have, it's like we want to ground things in examples that are really, that people can make use of.
Cool.
And it's just so much, I think the way that you teach and the way that you're looking at leadership, I think so many of us want to learn more leadership skills and tools. And I feel like what you're doing is also a spiritual practice. It's a life practice. It's a moment to moment practice. So it hits all the levels, it's like, cool. I think it's fun because it affects every area of life and every moment. So yeah, thank you so much. These interviews you can find on my page, and I also will, I'm a little behind, but I will be uploading them to YouTube, and then Rick can make use of this in any way he wants. So if he wants.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So, and then just for those of you who, some of you may know me and some of you may not, this show happens every week and I'm starting it up again, and I have a great lineup of people, and it's on a range of people are doing all kinds of different work in the world, in the realm of transformation that I have on the show. My name again is Lori Beth, and I do different kinds of work. I do psychotherapy. I've been a psychotherapist for a long time, and I do online sessions for parents and teenagers and adults. And I also have a psycho-spiritual mentorship program. And that program is more of an intensive program for women. It's 3, 6, or 9 months. And I'm really providing, it's actually working on every level of your being. And I'm really providing a lot of somatic, spiritual, and therapeutic tools. So that, and similar to Rick's work, so that basically my big thing is like to help women who've been in the personal growth and spirit, like been into personal growth and spiritual practice for a long time and all the stuff that we've been into, stop feeling like a perpetual self-improvement project and start being able to live in the fullness of who we are, but also doing, the deeper somatic and trauma healing work that can allow for that. But in all healing, everything's happening moment to moment in the way that we've been talking about it today. But yeah, so in that program, I do a lot of work around, it's like I'm working with you intensively, and we're doing it's a combination of providing all of those tools with like actually going for what you want in life, combining it with like the action in life. And then I'm also going to be leading a 4-month group that will be a very intimate group for women. So if you're interested in any of those, you can reach out to me. And thank you for tuning in. And thank you so much, Rick, for
Thank you.
being here. Yeah. Okay.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Get off of Facebook.